Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Let's talk about the 3 and 4-year-olds. Typically, they have very low tone, which means that they don't have the strength in their arm muscles, their leg muscles, and their core muscles to perform sports at a very high level. So, with that said, there should be things that you expect to happen in class, and let me give you a couple of examples. Who teaches 3 and 4-year-olds in their own class? All right, excellent. So, you've had those situations where they're punching in class, and you look over, and Hunter's arm drops. So you walk over to Hunter, and you're like, okay, put your arm up. And then you look over, and Noah's arm drops. So you walk over to Noah, and you're like, Noah, put your arm up. And you look back, and Hunter's arm just dropped. Raise your hand if it had that happened before, right? Raise your hand if it frustrates you when you're doing like blocks in the 3 and 4-year-old class, and they rest their blocks in their hands, right? And you're like, get your hand off your head. And they got spaghetti arms. Well, think about it. They don't have the upper body strength to hold their arm out for more than 10 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds at the most, before their arm gets tired. If you think about it, it'd be like me holding a bucket of water. I might not even be able to lift a bucket of water, but holding it up for 5 seconds, I'm going to be like, oh, it's getting tired. My arm is tired. That's why they're dropping their arms. Before I understood this, I would get very frustrated with the 3 and 4-year-olds, and I would think that they were lazy. Same thing with their kicking and their jumping. Oh, by the way, you can tell if a 3 and 4-year-old has really good upper body strength by asking them to do arm circles. If they can do full arm, big arm circles and little arm circles, that means that their shoulder muscles are developed. But most of the time, 6 out of 10 3 and 4-year-olds, they're going to do this because their shoulder muscles are not developed. I actually just did it with my son, and he's doing this. That's why crawling is one of the early skills that we have. When we crawl across the mat, we're doing it to help them with their spatial awareness, which I'll get into in a second, but also develop their upper body muscles. Also, think about it when they kick. How many times have you had a 3 and 4-year-old fall in class? Have you ever gone through a 3 and 4-year-old class when one kid hasn't fallen? Right? They fall because they don't have good leg muscle. If you ask a 3 or 4-year-old, mostly 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds are kind of in that middle part, but if you ask a 3 or 4-year-old to jump forward with both feet, you're usually going to get the dominant leg to go forward first, and they're going to land like that. If they can jump forward with both feet and land on both feet, that means that they're above their physical stage of development for their lower body muscles. Do you see how I broke that down? Above their physical stage of development for their lower body muscles. Okay? Same thing with their core muscles. Let's talk about when 3 and 4-year-olds are supposed to sit, right? You have them sitting on the mat, legs crossed, hands on their knees, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're like this, then they're like this, then they're like that. True or false? True. And you're like, get up, sit still. No, their core muscles are not developed yet. So we would be like me sitting right here and Clayton coming over and sitting on my shoulders. I'm going to be like, oh my God, that's heavy, that's heavy, that's heavy, that's heavy, I'm going to fall. So when you think about that, it's going to help you understand that that's part of their stage of development. Why is this important? Number one, so that you don't blame the child for being lazy. That's the most important thing. We don't want them to be lazy. Excuse me. Number two, so that you can turn around and translate to the parent why it's happening. Dad comes up, my son keeps dropping his arm when he punches. Why is he resting his hand on his head? Because it's part of his stage of development. His upper body muscles aren't developed. Our goal is to get him to the point where he can hold that high block without resting it on his head to put him above his stage of development compared to the average child. Now all of a sudden dad's like, all right, perfect. Or mom's like, my daughter just keeps rolling around on the floor during class. Yeah, it's part of her physical stage of development with her core muscles. They're not developed yet. That's why I know crawling is another reason why we do crawling, is to help them build those core muscles so that they can sit still without falling over. Same thing with the lower body muscles. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay, so let's talk about what to expect. As I mentioned, we should expect them to drop their arms while punching or blocking. Fall when they're trying to do more than 2 kicks at one time. I tried it with Van. Van can do 3 kicks before he falls on the ground. And usually when he does it, he animates it too. So 1, 2, whoa! Right? Because they're also animating. We'll talk about that when we talk about their social stage of development. And wiggle when sitting still, and lose control of their body when they're moving in multiple directions. How many times do your kids crash into each other? All the time, right? So, your goal again is to get them punching and blocking without dropping their arms, be able to do 10 blocks without touching their head or dropping their arms. Be able to hold their punch out for 10 seconds without dropping their arms. If they can do that, what are you telling the parent? They can do 10 good punches and hold the last punch out there for 10 seconds without dropping their arms. What would you tell that mom or dad? They're above their stage of development. Keep going. Make it even More specific, for their upper body muscles. So if I have a 3 or 4-year-old who does 10 strong punches and holds that 10th punch out, I'm going to go over to dad, either during class, mom or dad, either during class or after class, and say, Hunter, because I used to do this with your dad, because your dad was the one who was like, toughen up my son, right? Hunter is above his physical stage of development for his upper body muscles. He's holding his arm out super strong. He can hold it for 10 seconds, where the average 3 or 4-year-old would drop their arm. Now, what is dad going? Yes, my son's a beast. That's what I want, and you are a genius for discovering it. Those are the types of things that we want. So you should make it part of your daily dialogue when you're running these classes to identify when they're above their stage of development and then turn around and translate it to the parents. How powerful would it be if Georgie came over and said Van's above his physical stage of development for his lower body muscles because he can jump off of a stack of pads and land on both feet without falling? How powerful is that as a parent to have a junior come and tell you that and identify it? You're no longer just a babysitter in your martial arts school or just assistant instructor. You're a child development expert. And those are the things that we want to identify today.